Well, it's a directive that will be transposed by member states no later than April next year, and it will harmonise the definition of the crime trafficking, because it varies a lot today. It will also harmonise more the levels of penalties. They are varying today between a couple of months and 20 years, and it will impose on member states to do some basic protection for the victims, such as medical, psychological and judicial assistance.
You did mention a story of some of the trafficked victims that you found. Now, a lot of people just immediately assume that we're talking about sexual exploitation. Although that is the majority, it's by no means all of them, is it?
No, it is the vast majority. Around 2/3 or maybe more is prostitution or trafficking in sex or for sexual reasons. But there is also an increasing tendency to have other victims who are engaged in very hard physical work, men who are sold or trafficked over Europe, locked in cabins and forced to work very, very hard for very little money. And this is something that is increasing, probably also because of the crisis, where more people are vulnerable and more people are getting desperate.
Your story, though, was about British young men, one of whom had been married, who came from pretty normal backgrounds. Do we need to change the public perception of what trafficking is?
Yes, we need to speak about this very openly, and we need to come back from the concept that there's only young girls in remote villages who can be victims. They are still the most important to target, but we need to make sure that it could happen, like this British guy told me, it can happen to anybody. If you have the right circumstances, if you're in a bad moment in your life, someone comes up and offers you what you think is a way out, you can easily be dragged into that position. So we need to show strong leadership and to engage with the civil society and the political different actors in here to talk about this. These are risks.
And of course, once you've dropped into that pit, it's very, very hard to scramble out again. Now, you mentioned in your presentation that prevention was one thing, but what will the directive do in terms of enabling people who find themselves in these situations? Is there anything that this directive will do to help it make it easier for them to escape what has turned into a nightmare? And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be anybody they can go to.
No, then they are, of course, in a very vulnerable situation, and nobody knows that they are there. So what we need to do, and what we are adding to the directive, is a strategy where member states will engage in educating border guards, police, social workers, engaging with the business to detect possible victims of trafficking and to inform them about the legal rights and the rights they have in that country. And this is an important aspect to add to the directive, this strategy of working together, building up national contacts point where we will benefit of the knowledge of everybody who has a possibility to come into contact with the trafficked victims.
And finally, you can't do anything centrally in Brussels because, of course, each member state has, first of all, different laws on, for example, prostitution. How will this directive coordinate all these member states and possibly move them in the future sometime towards a common policy, a common strategy, because it's a cross-border and indeed in and out of the EU issue? So you need a coordinated approach, don't you?
We do, and that's why it's so important that the directive is transposed in member states, so that we have the same definition and the same penalties and some things that all member states are obliged to do, and this we can monitor. But more importantly is also to connect, to build up national platforms who can contact each other, that we invest in research, common European research, getting statistics and numbers, best practices, engaging in different education prospects and so on, and having everybody on board. And for the moment, I see a great interest from member states on this. But you're right, the member states need to do the work.